Filming had barely begun when the mood on set shifted in a way no one expected. Crew members moved along their usual paths, checking cameras and brushing lint from velvet curtains, while cast members traded the kind of small talk that usually fills the quiet moments before a long day. Nothing in the air suggested that trouble was creeping toward them, yet something faint and uneasy lingered just enough to make a few people glance around as if waiting for a signal. When that signal came, it tore straight through the room. A shout rose from the far end of the hallway, sharp enough to freeze the extras who had been gathering near the stage doors. No one could tell who started yelling, but the sound carried a note of real anger, the kind that comes from a wound that has been ignored too long. Moments later, the door slammed so hard that dust drifted from the ceiling. Two cast members rushed out, both red-faced and breathing hard. They spoke over each other in jagged pieces, each blaming the other for something no one nearby could understand. A producer tried to ease between them with a calming gesture, but his presence barely slowed them. What began as a heated exchange grew into a storm of accusations that stirred every listener. Rumors had been seeping through the production for weeks, and fans online had already sensed that old grudges were resurfacing. Now those grudges had found their breaking point. When the shouting carried down the hallway, Mona Scott stepped out of a side room and looked toward the noise with a gaze that told the crew she already understood what she was about to walk into. She moved forward with a measured pace, though even she seemed surprised when a sudden crash erupted from behind the curtain leading to the backstage dressing area. A chair toppled. Something else fell with a heavy thud. The tension snapped like a dry branch. Several staff members hurried toward the sound, trying to push through a narrow passage where cast members were already gathering with startled expressions. Someone shouted for security. Someone else pulled out a phone before a production assistant snatched it away. Inside that cramped dressing area, emotions had turned fierce. A voice shouted a warning. Another answered with a challenge. When Mona reached the doorway, the scene had already tipped beyond control. Two cast members, both locked in a long and bitter feud, lunged toward each other with such force that a row of makeup lights shook on the wall. Their fight carried the weight of years of jealousy, resentment, and half-told stories. A stylist tried to intervene but stepped back at once when the struggle grew sharper. Even those who had once promised to stay neutral felt an involuntary pull to choose a side. Security rushed in with quick steps, but by then the chaos had spread enough to rattle the entire set. Mona raised her voice once, firm and clear, yet the shouts drowned it out. For the first time in a long while, the woman known for holding the reins of every storm found herself watching a moment she could not simply steer back on course. The air thickened with the kind of tension that makes fans lean closer to their screens. It was the moment when everyone, both on set and far beyond, realized something unforgettable had just begun. The moment Mona Scott stepped into the hallway, the air seemed to shift. What had started as murmurs and sideways glances exploded into full-blown chaos. Cast members were shouting, some pacing back and forth, others frozen in disbelief, staring at the mess that had taken over the backstage area. Fans would later be shocked to see how quickly tensions escalated, but on set, the storm had been brewing for weeks. It started with whispers about secret alliances and old grudges resurfacing, arguments over favoritism, and disputes that nobody wanted to confront until now. Mona, usually calm and commanding, felt her chest tighten as she observed the scene. Two of the main cast were at the center, their faces flushed, their hands gesturing wildly, each word dripping with contempt. "You think you can just undermine me?" One hissed, the volume rising until it became a raw scream. "I've put up with your games for too long." The other retorted, pointing aggressively, eyes narrowing with fury. The crew scattered, some ducking behind props, others trying to maintain order. But the intensity of the confrontation was magnetic, pulling everyone into the vortex. Security had been summoned immediately, their footsteps echoing down the corridor, as they tried to wedge themselves between the warring parties. Yet every attempt to de-escalate was met with resistance, each voice louder than the last, until it seemed impossible that anyone could regain control. Mona's heart pounded as she surveyed the situation, noting the expressions of shock and fear on the faces of the newer cast members. The family of crew, those who had worked side by side for years, were suddenly divided, some whispering in corners about who was to blame, others openly picking sides. The energy was electric, almost tangible, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the tension and were now vibrating with it. Every shout, every slam of a hand on a countertop, every toppled chair amplified the sense of dread. Yet within that chaos, there were moments of startling clarity. One cast member, normally quiet and reserved, stepped forward with a trembling voice, trying to reason, trying to mediate. "Please, stop this," they pleaded, but their words were swallowed by the storm. A stylist, holding a tray of delicate makeup, stepped back sharply as someone bumped into her, spilling powders and liquids across the floor. The glittering chaos mirrored the emotional turmoil that had erupted in the room. Meanwhile, cameras that had been quietly recording the empty hallways now captured every anguished expression. Every sharp exchange, every minute gesture that revealed deeper resentments. It was clear that what had seemed minor disagreements, in private, had transformed into a full-scale emotional battle. And Mona felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her shoulders. She knew that her decision in the next moments could either calm the storm or let it spiral further out of control. One cast member shoved another, hands grasping at shoulders, voices echoing off the walls. Security finally reached the center, placing themselves firmly between the two fighters, but the glare and the venomous words continued. The tension was almost unbearable, and for a fleeting moment, everyone held their breath, waiting for an explosion. Mona's voice rang out, firm and unwavering, cutting through the cacophony. "Stop this, now," she commanded, and for a heartbeat, silence hovered as if the room itself had acknowledged her authority. Yet it was only a pause, a brief inhale before the storm resumed. "You always do this," one accused, the word dripping with accusation, eyes blazing. "I've had enough of your lies," came the sharp reply, each syllable punctuated with raw emotion. Crew members flinched, the tension gnawing at their nerves, their hands trembling as they reached for phones, some to record, others to call for further assistance. The air smelled faintly of hairspray, coffee, and fear, a combination that seemed almost surreal given the level of drama unfolding. A production assistant tried desperately to usher people toward the exits, hoping to create space, to contain the frenzy, but the actors were too caught up in the emotional battle, too consumed by old grievances and the adrenaline of confrontation. Fans watching from afar would later be shocked to learn that even the security team, trained for tense situations, had to use all their experience to keep the peace, each gesture measured yet firm, each step calculated to prevent injury. Mona moved closer, speaking quietly, yet with authority, trying to reach the fighters on a personal level. "Look at me," she said. "This isn't who you are. Stop this before someone gets hurt." For a moment, the words seemed to sink in. The breathing slowed slightly, the fists unclenched, but just as quickly, a new accusation shot through the air, reigniting the fire. One cast member accused another of betrayal from months ago, secrets that had festered unseen, words twisted and amplified by pride and fear. "I trusted you," the first cried, tears glimmering in the harsh light, "and you stabbed me in front of everyone." The second responded, voice sharp as a knife, "I did what I had to do. Don't twist this on me." The voices rose again, overlapping in a chaotic symphony of rage, hurt, and desperation. Mona signaled to security, who immediately repositioned themselves, trying to create a barrier, trying to breathe order into the storm. Staff whispered warnings, eyes darting between the combatants, and then a sudden slam against a wall made everyone flinch. The room vibrated with tension, some gasping audibly, others frozen in disbelief. In that instant, it was clear, the brawl had escalated beyond simple argument. What had been simmering resentment, what had been weeks of private whispers and subtle manipulations had now erupted into something no one could have predicted. Even the calmest crew members were on edge, hearts racing, hands shaking, as if the drama had seeped into their very bones. Mona's eyes scanned the room, calculating, observing, assessing which emotions were driving each action. She knew the cast would remember this moment forever, and the choices made now could define relationships for years to come. Voices rang out again, accusations mingled with apologies, some tentative, some biting, each layer of conversation revealing new depth to old wounds. A camera operator, normally silent, muttered under his breath, "This is insane." As he captured every moment, every tear, every shout. Outside the dressing room, other cast members and extras listened, some leaning against walls, faces pale, hearts pounding. Gossip spread like wildfire, speculation running through the corridors as everyone tried to predict what would happen next. The tension was so thick, it could almost be touched, a living, breathing entity that seemed to press against the walls, the floors, the very ceiling. Mona took a deep breath, her mind racing. She needed to regain control, but every attempt was met with resistance. Every word of reason answered with emotion, fury, and heartbreak. A friend of one of the fighters tried to intervene, placing a trembling hand on a shoulder, but was shoved back, the room erupting into shouts once more. Security stepped in with firm grips, pulling bodies apart. But the energy of the confrontation was infectious, spreading through everyone present. Whispers of betrayal, of favoritism, of lies and half-truths filled the air, each accusation sharpening the edge of the argument. Mona felt a moment of despair, the storm seemingly endless, but she knew she had to persevere. Enough, she called again, voice rising, steady and commanding. Stop this now, or filming stops, and you will answer to me. For a second, the room stilled, eyes locked on her, chests heaving, minds racing. The pause was palpable, everyone sensing the gravity of her warning. Yet beneath the surface, the undercurrents of anger, hurt, and betrayal still swirled, waiting for the slightest spark to ignite another explosion. This was only the beginning. The backstage area had become a battlefield of emotions, a collision of egos, rivalries, and unresolved tension that could no longer be contained. Mona, standing at the center, understood the stakes. One wrong move, one unchecked outburst, and the entire production could collapse under the weight of its own drama. Fans would later be shocked to learn how close the confrontation came to turning violent, how quickly friendships fractured, and how every word spoken in those tense moments would echo for weeks. The energy in the room was almost unbearable, a living pulse of chaos that left no one untouched, no one unaffected, and no one certain of what would come next. Each shout, each glare, each trembling gesture was a testament to years of hidden conflict brought to the surface in one explosive incident, a storm that Mona could feel in her bones, a storm she now had to navigate with care, precision, and an unflinching determination to restore order before it was too late. The pause in the chaos was short. As soon as one fighter drew back, another voice erupted, laced with accusation and disbelief. "You think you can just walk away from this?" it screamed, echoing off the walls, bouncing into every corner of the backstage area. The room felt smaller now, suffocating under the weight of emotion, each person caught between fear and fascination. Crew members exchanged worried glances, hands trembling, unsure whether to intervene or step aside. The intensity of the moment was palpable, a living entity that seemed to throb with each shout, each tearful whisper, each sharp intake of breath. Mona's eyes scanned the room, taking in every detail, the spilled makeup on the floor, the toppled chair leaning against a wall, the trembling hands of the new cast members who had never witnessed such raw confrontation. It was a delicate balance. One wrong word, one sudden movement, and the entire scene could erupt into irreversible chaos. One of the older cast members, someone known for keeping a level head, stepped forward, trying to reason, but was immediately drowned out by the torrent of accusations. "Don't act like you understand," one screamed, voice cracking under the strain. "You've done nothing but watch while everything fell apart." Another shot back, voice dripping with rage and betrayal. Security moved swiftly, interposing themselves between bodies that were dangerously close to collision. Their presence was firm, unyielding, yet even they could not completely contain the emotion. The fighters' eyes burned with fury, and for every step security took, there was a countermove, a lunge, a gesture meant to assert dominance, to reclaim some shred of perceived power. Mona took a step closer, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Enough," she said, steady and commanding. "You will end this now, or there will be consequences you cannot undo." The words landed like a hammer, and for a brief moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Hearts raced, chests heaved, and for a second, even the most volatile cast members hesitated. It was the kind of silence that precedes a storm, a fragile calm that could vanish with a single spark. And then, of course, the spark came. A whispered insult turned into a pointed accusation, the conversation spiraling into the type of argument that no one could untangle. Staff whispered behind cameras, eyes wide, trying to document the unfolding drama without getting caught in the middle. Whispers turned into shouts, shouts into near screams, and the air became electric with tension. One crew member muttered, "I've never seen anything like this," as they clutched the edge of a table for balance. The fighters were relentless, each word another dagger, each glance another provocation. Mona felt her heart pound, the weight of responsibility pressing down. She knew that if the situation escalated even further, the production itself could be jeopardized. A stylist, holding a tray of delicate brushes and palettes, stepped back quickly, knocking over a cup of water that splashed across the floor. The sound echoed, punctuating the tension, drawing gasps from those nearby. Security tightened their hold, guiding the combatants apart. But every separation seemed temporary, fleeting, as if the anger itself could not be contained by mere physical distance. The room was a storm of emotions, a battlefield where pride, jealousy, and past grievances collided. Even the newer cast members, who had hoped to remain neutral, were pulled in. Caught between loyalty and fear, admiration and dread, Mona moved deliberately among the chaos, trying to assert control, trying to calm what seemed uncontrollable. "Look at me," she said, voice firm. "Stop this, now. We are professionals, and this ends here." For a moment, some semblance of order returned. A few shoulders relaxed, a few hands unclenched, but underneath the surface, the undercurrents of resentment ran deep, waiting for the next opportunity to ignite. Someone muttered a comment about past betrayals, and the room erupted again, louder this time. Voices overlapping, words tangled in fury and hurt. Security acted quickly, stepping between bodies, placing hands firmly on shoulders, guiding individuals toward corners. It was a delicate dance, a choreography of intervention that required precision, patience, and nerves of steel. Mona watched carefully, noting which cast members could be reasoned with, which could not, and which were teetering on the edge of physical confrontation. The atmosphere was tense, thick with emotion, every gesture scrutinized, every glance interpreted as a provocation or a challenge. Outside the room, whispers spread quickly, as crew members and minor actors relayed snippets of what they could see. Rumors flew, some based on fact, some exaggerated, all adding fuel to the fire. Fans would later be shocked at how raw and unfiltered the confrontation had become. How even the most composed professionals were caught in the torrent of emotion. Mona's mind raced. She knew this would not end easily, that reconciliation would require time, careful handling, and perhaps an acknowledgement of truths long denied. One of the combatants, eyes blazing, suddenly lunged again, narrowly stopped by security's quick reflexes. The room seemed to vibrate with tension, every sound amplified. The clatter of equipment, the hiss of frustrated breaths, the stifled sobs of those overwhelmed by the intensity. Mona spoke again, calm but unyielding. "Enough. Step back. Now." Slowly, the fighters began to separate, eyes still locked, chests heaving, sweat glistening on foreheads. Whispers of old grievances surfaced, voices trembling with emotion, accusations sharp, layered with history and betrayal. Security held firm, guiding each individual away, creating space, breathing order into chaos. The crew, though shaken, began to regain composure, murmuring a reassurance, adjusting equipment, documenting everything for later review. Mona's gaze swept the room, calculating, strategizing her next move. Aware that the decisions made in these moments would echo far beyond the walls of the backstage area. Even as calm seemed to settle, the tension lingered, a shadow over everyone present. The air was thick, almost tangible, heavy with the unspoken truths, the secrets, the grudges that had erupted so violently. One cast member, voice still shaking, muttered an apology. Another shook their head in disbelief, unwilling to forgive, unwilling to admit any fault. Mona approached, quietly but firmly, guiding conversations, attempting to draw out understanding, attempting to diffuse the lingering anger. The room slowly began to quiet, though eyes still flicked, still darted, still reassurances, adjusting equipment, documenting everything for later review. Mona's gaze swept the room, calculating, strategizing her next move. Aware that the decisions made in these moments would echo far beyond the walls of the backstage area. Even as calm seemed to settle, the tension lingered, a shadow over everyone present. The air was thick, almost tangible, heavy with the unspoken truths, the secrets, the grudges that had erupted so violently. One cast member, voice still shaking, muttered an apology. Another shook their head in disbelief, unwilling to forgive, unwilling to admit any fault. Mona approached, quietly but firmly, guiding conversations, attempting to draw out understanding, attempting to diffuse the lingering anger. The room slowly began to quiet, though eyes still flicked, still darted, still searched for signs of renewed conflict. Outside, the gossip continued, whispers and speculations amplifying the intensity. Inside, Mona navigated the fractured emotional landscape, aware that every gesture, every word, every moment could tip the balance back into chaos. The crew worked, carefully, resetting props, cleaning spills, ensuring that the space was safe and functional. Cameras, ever present, captured every second, every expression, every word, a permanent record of the storm that had raged. Mona felt the weight of leadership pressing down, the responsibility of holding a fractured set together, of mending what had been broken, of guiding hearts and minds back to a semblance of professionalism. She knew the challenges were far from over, that every interaction in the coming days would be influenced by the events unfolding now. The storm had passed, for the moment, leaving in its wake a trail of emotion, tension, and unresolved conflict. The memory of shouts, accusations, and near violence would linger in the minds of all present, shaping relationships, loyalties, and the atmosphere for weeks to come. Yet in the eye of the storm, Mona remained steady, a commanding presence, the anchor holding the pieces together, carefully, deliberately, aware that the next spark could reignite the fire. The room, though quieter now, still thrummed with energy, each heartbeat echoing in the minds of those who had witnessed the confrontation. It was a moment that none would forget, a testament to human emotion in its rawest, most unfiltered form, and as Mona took a deep breath, preparing for the next challenge, it was clear that the drama was far from over, that even in calm, the storm's shadow remained. Waiting, watching, ready to re-emerge at the slightest provocation. The fragile calm did not last long. As soon as Mona stepped aside to give breathing room, a sudden burst of laughter, sharp and mocking, cut through the tension, reigniting the emotions that had barely begun to settle. One of the cast members, eyes glinting with defiance, turned toward a rival with a smirk that spoke of past betrayals and calculated provocation. "You really thought you could get away with that?" The words dripped with sarcasm, piercing the thick air of the backstage area. The rival's face darkened instantly, nostrils flaring, fists tightening as memories of old arguments surfaced. The air, already heavy, seemed to constrict around everyone present, pressing down with a sense of inevitability. Security moved quickly, stepping between the two, hands firm on shoulders, attempting to redirect the energy, but the intensity of the emotions was electric, a live wire that no amount of physical intervention could fully contain. Mona's eyes narrowed, scanning for the next flare-up, her mind racing with strategies, with ways to maintain control while the storm of egos, grudges, and hidden animosities threatened to spiral further. Fans who would later witness clips of this moment online would be shocked at how quickly laughter could turn into venom. How quickly a minor provocation could escalate into a full-blown confrontation. Whispers of old grievances surfaced, some tentative, some accusatory, each word a spark to dry tinder. A stylist, still trembling from the earlier chaos, muttered under her breath, trying to focus on picking up scattered items while avoiding the eye of anyone poised to erupt. Cameras rolled silently, capturing every tremor, every shift in body language, every flicker of emotion. Mona, sensing the rising tide, raised her voice with deliberate authority. "Enough," she shouted, sharp and unyielding. "I will not allow this to continue." The room fell into a tense hush for a heartbeat, each individual gauging her resolve, measuring the boundaries. Yet, as quickly as the hush arrived, it dissipated, replaced by low murmurs and side comments, each one a subtle threat, a silent challenge, a precursor to the next explosion. One cast member, still smarting from previous accusations, stepped forward with a trembling hand, pointing directly at another. "You've lied to me, manipulated me, and now you act innocent." The accusation hung in the air, heavy, tangible, suffocating. The accused responded with equal fervor, eyes blazing, veins prominent on neck and forehead. "I've done nothing of the sort. Stop twisting my words." The back and forth was relentless, a verbal duel punctuated by gestures that bordered on aggression. Security interposed themselves repeatedly, hands firm yet cautious, redirecting BHEs, guiding angry individuals apart, yet even their presence could not fully suppress the emotional storm. Mona moved closer, voice steady, attempting to reach the hearts behind the anger. "Look at me," she said calmly. "This is not who you are, this is not how you handle conflict." For a brief instant, it seemed to work. Shoulders relaxed fractionally, chests unclenched, eyes softened. Yet beneath the surface, the simmering tension remained, a hidden current waiting for the slightest provocation. Outside the dressing room, murmurs of concern spread among the extras and minor crew members. Some whispering to one another, others clutching phones, trying to capture evidence of the chaos. The gossip network moved faster than any camera could, speculation running rampant, adding layers of tension to an already volatile environment. A sudden movement drew Mona's attention. A chair tipped over as one cast member spun away, nearly colliding with a camera operator. The operator froze, eyes wide, heart pounding, waiting for the inevitable collision that never came. Security acted immediately, guiding the cast member back with firm but non-violent force. The tension, though momentarily managed, remained thick, palpable, suffocating. Mona spoke again, voice steady, low, but carrying undeniable authority. "This ends now. Do you understand?" Eyes flicked toward her, nods tentative, breaths uneven. It was not a complete victory, but it was a foothold, a chance to guide the storm rather than be consumed by it. Whispers of past misdeeds continued to surface, however, each confession, each pointed finger, adding layers to the already complex web of emotion. "You think this is over?" One muttered under their breath, barely audible, yet enough to make the surrounding cast members tense. The mere sound of the words sparked immediate reactions. Whispers spreading, glances exchanged, the fragile peace teetering on the edge of collapse. Mona's eyes locked onto the source, the determination in her gaze unmistakable. She stepped forward, a commanding presence, guiding the conversation, redirecting the energy, pulling the narrative back from the brink of chaos. Security adjusted, positions, hands firmly on shoulders, separating bodies, yet remaining flexible enough to respond to any sudden movements. The room felt like a pressure cooker, each second stretching, the emotions inside reaching a boiling point that could explode with the slightest spark. One cast member, tears glistening in the harsh lights, muttered an apology, though the words were jagged, uneven, fragile. Another shook their head, refusing to forgive, their jaw-tight fists still clenched. Mona's mind raced, calculating every step, every word, every potential trigger. She knew that the next moments would define relationships, trust, and the atmosphere of the entire production. Fans later would be shocked at the raw, unfiltered emotion, at the vulnerability displayed by people usually careful to hide it, at the intensity of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak laid bare in one room. Outside, gossip spread like wildfire, rumors amplified, speculation growing wilder with each retelling. Inside, Mona worked tirelessly, mediating, listening, redirecting, guiding, an anchor amid the storm of emotion. A low hiss of frustration erupted as one cast member tried to reassert dominance, only to be met with security's firm grip, guiding them back without force, just enough to maintain order. The tension seemed to pulse, almost alive. In the room, a living entity shaped by fear, pride, past betrayals, and raw human emotion. Even moments of calm were fleeting, punctuated by whispers, glances, subtle gestures of challenge. Mona knew the work was far from over. This was a delicate dance, balancing authority, empathy, and strategy, ensuring that no one was harmed, that the production could continue, that relationships could be salvaged. Every second mattered, each choice she made, rippling outward, affecting the entire cast, crew, and eventually, the audience. The energy in the room was electric, almost tangible, each heartbeat syncing with the collective anxiety, excitement, and unresolved tension. The storm, though temporarily tamed, lingered like a shadow over challenges, more confrontations, more revelations, and Mona, vigilant and resolute, prepared to navigate everyone, aware that every interaction, every word, every glance carried the weight of consequence in a room still thrumming with the echoes of chaos, fury, and unresolved conflict. As the dust began to settle and the echoes of shouts faded into tense whispers, the room remained heavy with the aftermath of the chaos. Mona Scott stood at the center, her expression calm yet commanding, aware that what had just transpired would be talked about for weeks, analyzed by fans, dissected by cast members, and speculated about endlessly on social media. The backstage brawl had left a mark that was impossible to erase. Faces once friendly now carried traces of suspicion. Loyalty lines were drawn in ways that could not be undone, and the energy of the space felt forever changed. The security team, exhausted but resolute, lingered nearby, a visible reminder that order had been restored, yet the emotional tremors continued to ripple outward. Some cast members whispered apologies, tentative, fragile, seeking to mend what had been broken. Others remained silent, arms crossed, eyes wary, unwilling to forgive so easily, unwilling to forget. The family of crew members, those who had witnessed the storm firsthand, exchanged uneasy glances, silently acknowledging that they had been caught in the eye of a confrontation that none could have predicted. The lessons of the day were clear. Pride, jealousy, and unspoken grievances had fueled a chain reaction that escalated faster than anyone could control. Mona, however, had remained the steady force, the anchor in a sea of turbulence, and her leadership had prevented what could have been a disaster of far greater proportions. The cameras continued to roll, capturing each subtle gesture, each flicker of emotion, ensuring that every moment of the conflict would live on in digital memory, available for fans to witness, dissect, and discuss. Outside the immediate scene, speculation ran rampant. Fans were shocked to see the raw vulnerability of personalities normally masked by glamour. Rehearsed lines, and scripted interactions. Social media exploded with theories, opinions, and heated debates. Each viewer convinced they had insight into motives, alliances, and betrayals that may or may not have existed. Mona's team began to regroup, quietly coordinating the next steps. Knowing that the integrity of the production, the morale of the cast, and the perception of viewers depended on careful handling of the aftermath. As the emotional dust settled, one thing was undeniable: the day had revealed truths long ignored, exposed fractures that had been festering beneath the surface, and tested loyalties in ways that could not easily be repaired. Yet amidst the tension, there were moments of clarity, small but significant, where understanding, reconciliation, or even simple acknowledgement offered a glimmer of hope that relationships could be rebuilt. Fans watching would later be shocked to realize the intensity of what unfolded. The layers of human emotion, and the power of unfiltered confrontation. They would debate endlessly, taking sides, analyzing motives, and speculating about what might come next. Mona, fully aware of this, knew that control in the coming days would be critical. She would need to navigate not just the logistics of production, but the delicate threads of trust, respect, and authority among cast and crew. The drama, though temporarily contained, had left a lingering energy that was impossible to ignore. Even in moments of calm, the room seemed to hum with potential conflict, a reminder that human emotion is volatile, unpredictable, and often uncontrollable. For fans, the spectacle was electrifying. A window into the raw reality behind the scenes of a production that many assumed was entirely polished and orchestrated. For those present, the experience was visceral, exhausting, and unforgettable, leaving a mark on relationships and the environment that could not be undone. As Mona took a deep breath, she addressed the room once more, calm yet firm, reminding everyone that professionalism, respect, and collaboration were non-negotiable. It was a moment of reflection, a chance to acknowledge what had occurred, and a reminder that the choices made today would shape the path forward. Now, you, the viewer, have witnessed the intensity, the emotion, and the human drama unfold in Imagine being in the room, feeling the tension rise, watching friendships strain, seeing loyalties tested, and experiencing the raw power of confrontation. Mona's leadership, the intervention of security, the reactions of cast and crew, all combined to create a story that is unforgettable, compelling, and impossible to ignore. We want to hear your thoughts. Which moment shocked you the most? Who do you think handled the tension better, and who let their emotions get the best of them? Share your opinions in the comments, weigh in on the drama, and join the conversation. If you were in Mona's position, how would you have handled the situation? Would you have intervened differently, or allowed the storm to rage until it burned itself out? Your perspective matters, and we want to know exactly what you think. Don't forget to hit that like button if the intensity, the emotion, and the drama kept you on the edge of your seat. Subscribing ensures you never miss a moment of shocking backstage revelations, dramatic confrontations, and explosive interactions that unfold in real time behind the scenes. Stay tuned, because as intense as this confrontation was, the story doesn't end here. There will be follow-ups, reactions, and more moments that will leave fans shocked, speechless, and completely captivated. Click subscribe, turn on notifications, and be part of the journey as we continue to uncover the secrets, conflicts, and explosive drama that unfold backstage, where emotions run high, loyalties are tested, and chaos lurks around every corner. Your voice, your opinions, and your engagement make all the difference. Comment below, share your thoughts, and let us know which cast member surprised you the most, who shocked you with their reaction, and who you think needs to apologize next. The stage may have been cleared for now, but the ripple effects of today's explosive events will be felt for weeks to come. Don't miss a single update, because every twist, every confrontation, and every unexpected turn is just waiting to unfold. Like, subscribe, and join us in witnessing every shocking moment as the drama continues to escalate behind the scenes, where the stakes are high, the emotions are raw, and the intensity is unlike anything you have ever seen. Your participation, your opinions, and your engagement ensure that you are part of the story, part of the unfolding narrative, and part of the shocking reality that fans everywhere are talking about.